Let's talk about the boundaries that a high achievement type individual should really be setting so that they avoid the potential burnout.
They're first and foremost around time. Your biggest issues are doing what Jeremy does on vacation, which is checking in with people because they need you. It's your vacation. Authenticity means you must take the rest.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in. All right. Welcome back, Freedom Point Podcast listeners. Thank you again for jumping into yet another episode of the Freedom Point. I'm so glad you're here with us again today. I've got another amazing guest, a very different guest. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I have Keren Eldad on the call. Keren, thank you for joining the show.
Jeremy, thank you so much for having me on the call.
Absolutely. And so Keren is a top executive coach that helps high achievers from Olympic athletes to Fortune 500 leaders reach extraordinary success. I love that, Keren. Before we kind of jump into some, details around, kind of my thoughts on the subject, I would love to hear a little bit more about, maybe your journey, your story, kind of this focus of what you're focused on now, the passion that got you into this space, etc.
Well, thank you so much again for having me. And it's a real honor to speak to your particular audience because it's an audience that's made up of my ideal demographic, if you will, and that's the overachiever. Overachiever, don't be fooled, does not necessarily mean one who has succeeded above and beyond. It means somebody who is intensely wired and genuinely aimed at achieving above and beyond. So it doesn't matter if you're completely obsessed with tulip growing or raising your children or the C-suite. The intensity, the obsessiveness, the ambition, those are the things that we all have in common. And I came to this work through my own collapse and my own resurrection. I was what I like to call a classic overachiever. I was very linear pathed. I was checking all the boxes and making sure to do everything quote unquote right. Straight A student, officer in the Army, really good elite education, marry tall guy, which as we all know is the apotheosis of everyone's desires in life. And I found myself in my early 30s in a deep depression, suicidal ideation, because though I had attained all of those check boxes, none of them were fulfilling to me. And I want to be very clear. I am not an entitled brat. Once again, was an officer in the Army, really nice person, middle-class family, great values. I simply realized through this that attaining all of the things I was quote unquote supposed to get didn't fulfill me at all. I'm waking up in the middle of the nicest house I've ever lived in, and I absolutely hated the city it was in, Zurich. I was married to that tall guy. He was abusive and horrible to me. I was waking up to a job that looked very glamorous from the outside as a CMO or the chief marketing officer of a luxury conglomerate, but I didn't particularly like what I did for a living. I didn't think it was my mission in life, and I didn't wake up excited for every single day. I somehow knew that this was a tiny iota of my potential. And so what I set out to do from that moment on, Jeremy, was torch it to the ground and start all over again, which was very, very courageous at the time, now looking back. But now I help people do the same. And as my business evolved, because at first it was just a coaching business to teach you how to go on the inner journey from A to Z, to reclaim meaning in your life, to discover your purpose, and to reformulate your success. But as I did this for, like, say, the first 3-4 years of my business, I started to notice that I was basically attracting people like me, crazy overachievers, people who are intensely wired, who understand things a certain way. And that's when I started to niche down into this particular category.
Keren, I love this. All right. I tell this to people all the time. Please don't steal the name of my next book. Okay. But my next book is going to be called Achievement Addict. Okay. Why? Because I can't stop. Right. I'm just wired that way. And even when I go on vacations with my family, I still have to check in, right? Because I have this like I can have fun as long as I know I've checked in and that nobody needs me, right? Nobody needs something from me that's preventing them, from achieving success in their own life. So sometimes I'm so achievement focused, but at the same time, I don't want to be the bottleneck for somebody else to achieve success too. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. The tagline of my book, Gilded, is breaking free from ambition, perfectionism, and the relentless pursuit of more. You are absolutely correct to call this an addiction. And the addiction is not to overachievement, it's not to getting excited and little dopamine hits every time you succeed. You pinpointed it. The addiction is to being or feeling needed. In other words, to feeling relevant and to feeling worth through your identity as quote unquote necessary or successful. That is an addiction. And like all addictions, any addict knows this, it's never going to fill you. It's never going to work out.
All right. So your advice to me is to burn the ships.
If you're courageous enough, but personally, I find that most people cannot do this. So I like to say that there are two alternatives. The first is you burn all the ships. That's a very Tony Robbins quote. If you want to take the island, burn all the ships. I happen to love that because, like I said, I'm a bit of a kamikaze naturally. But the other two options are trauma. Don't worry about that one. Life will send it to you. Most superstars do collapse. They burn out. They suffer one of life's general traumas, debt and divorce being just a couple of them. Disease is something I see very often. People who truly burn themselves to the ground and have a stroke, have a heart attack, have a very severe illness or a chronic illness interfere with their lives. I do not wish this upon you. I'm just saying it's one of the very systemic outcomes of this modus operandi. And the third option is my favorite, and that's coaching. Go on the inner journey, submit to it, and really make the decision to redefine your life by your own volition. Many of us, particularly in midlife, just realize what I realized in my 30s, which is I climbed that ladder and I definitely don't like what I see up here. And the best thing that you can do is go all the way down and rebuild it again by truly inquiring this time, by asking the questions you didn't ask at the onset of your initial career that has gotten you this. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. I mean, you have to be intentional. You have to make that decision. You have to stick to it. And I'm sure throughout the journey, having somebody like you as a coach, having other people in your life that can hold you accountable, right, to what your, new focus, right, or your redefinition or what, your priorities are in life. I think that's important. I'm a sales guy I should say this. I'm a recovering sales guy. Okay. I was in sales for 2.5 decades, consistently the top performer in all of North America out of thousands of people, okay, that were selling the same tech services that I was. So pinnacle of my game, right? I'm no longer in that game. I've redefined myself in an entirely different industry. But I would like to talk specifically to that other high achieving salesperson or high achievement person in general that might be listening to this episode. How would you say as a coach, how do you sell something that's transformational in somebody's life, right? You're convicted that whatever you're selling, whether it's tulips or technology sells products, right? You're selling something transformational. How do you balance selling something transformational that somebody needs without selling your soul, right? Does that make sense?
Ever. There's two components to this answer because I too am a recovering salesperson. And I have to say, when I recovered, sales went much, much better and I was already pretty good. There are two secrets. The first secret is to understand the pain. The best way to sell anything is to not latch on to who is the demographic or how awesome the product is to understand the pain. If you understand the pain of the other side, and genuinely connect to it. You empathize with it deeply. You understand why they need this. You understand what it would do for their life to resolve this. You truly feel for them and genuinely understand what it would cost them to not have this. You understand how to sell this. The second thing is to truly believe, to have true conviction in the solution. And that cannot be inauthentic. I always say that the biggest problem I had with the luxury brands is, while I myself happen to love luxury brands, is that they're not a necessity. And I've never in my life felt that they were a necessity. And I'd never thought that the most important thing about you is purchasing a nice watch. If the integrity is not there, the sale is going to be very painful for you. Coaching, on the other hand, has been very easy for me because I understand that this is a system. It is a system that works. And you're sitting with a person who can see your blind spots a mile away and can shorten this process for you. I also understand your pain, the size of your pain, and what it would cost you to not get past it. So if you have those two components, true understanding of the pain and a true conviction in the solution that is offered, the ease, the convenience, the whole package, that's a sale. Does that help?
Oh man, it helps out a lot.
Yeah. And by the way, here's what it allowed me to do, Jeremy. It's so interesting. It's allowed me to super duper chill out.
Yeah, makes total sense because you're comfortable, right? You're confident that the solution that you're providing to somebody is in fact meeting that pain point, right? It's solving a problem, if that makes sense. And you're allowed to be more genuine and authentic, which ultimately builds trust as well. So, what did it feel like? And maybe this is you, maybe this is me, maybe I'm just making this up. Okay, what does it feel like to be so good at the game? Okay, that you no longer believe in the dream you were selling. Can you outgrow your pitch, right? Can you outgrow your pitch, right? You're so good at it.
Yes. And that happens to many coaches, but you don't outgrow the mission. I have certainly outgrown the pitch. I don't think I could call myself enlightened because I don't think anybody can, but except for maybe Byron Katie, who's a true guru. But I'm not interested in the original mission anymore for myself. I don't really need accolades or success in conventional terms anymore. I'm more interested in becoming nobody and sort of seamlessly disintegrating into the lives that I help. But the mission hasn't gone away. What I really do care about is giving this to everybody else. And that's what keeps it alive for you. What keeps it alive for you is the suffering of others and the ultimate benefits, not only to them, but to society.
I'm Zach Haptonstall, CEO and co-founder of Rise 48 Equity. Our goal is to help you protect and grow your wealth by investing in large multifamily apartment buildings. We do all the work as far as sourcing these large apartment buildings from the brokers, doing all of the on-site management with our vertically integrated property management company, doing all the renovations with our vertically integrated construction company. We completely rebrand the exteriors. We will renovate the interiors to our full platinum level scope, which increases the value of the asset to get that profit margin for the investor. If you'd like to learn about how you can partner with us on these exciting opportunities, and go to our website and set up a call with our team.
Let's talk about the boundaries that a high achievement type individual should really be setting so that they avoid the potential burnout.
They're first and foremost around time. For those who are not familiar with the work, I would first and foremost focus on my boundaries around time. Your biggest issues are doing what Jeremy does on vacation, which is checking in lovingly, sweetly with people because they need you. It's your vacation. If you start to willingly respond and react to external needs before your own, you will condition yourself and perpetually condition yourself to putting other needs before your own. This is no way to serve because ultimately it is self-betrayal, and self-betrayal is incongruence. You are actually not practicing what you preach. Authenticity means you must take the rest. You must take the vacation. Some small things that I've done myself, Jeremy, are, for example, my email alerts me when it's not working hours and will literally say, "Are you sure you want to send this email?" I don't do it anymore. And over time, I just literally started to become conditioned to not answer outside of working hours and to certainly not annoy the crap out of my team outside of working hours. I recommend that almost all overachievers, because there are some I understand who have extenuating circumstances, really choose to live this way, and it will really change the game for you. And another one of the tiny hacks is I don't check my email first thing in the morning anymore, which is a disease, because that definitely makes the external world more significant than you.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. I think even within Microsoft Outlook, I've noticed that there's been a change now where if you're responding to somebody's email outside of business hours, it actually allows you to schedule send it the following day during business hours. So while to the recipient of that email, they might have assumed that you just responded at the next appropriate working hour, the truth is you are actually doing it off hours, but you're conditioning the person to know, like, listen, if it's after hours or weekends, I'm unavailable, right? And so you're conditioning maybe people that are on your work team or your prospects or your clients, that you are protecting, the bookends to your calendar, if that makes sense.
Very, very true. And I have to say, for all leaders, this is very important because you're also enabling other people to live like normal people. The stress does not need to happen at this level.
Yeah. So there, a lot of high achievement type people don't have a hard time creating more money, right? They have a hard time protecting their time and trading more time for more money, if that makes sense. So how do you help people kind of redefine success, just beyond, producing more ROI or producing more revenue, if that makes sense?
So begin to understand that the ROI is nonsense. They're not just sacrificing their time. Most of them are also sacrificing their relationships, particularly their intimate relationships. They're sacrificing their physical health because even if you look fantastic, if you're constantly abusing yourself mentally and in other words, you're speaking to yourself in a berating way and you're over exercising and you're over focused on the dimensions of self punishment, you're really going to suffer emotionally and physically later in life. And they're sacrificing meaning. They are so connected to the doing that they're not connecting to the being. As a result of that, you have to start to really challenge what the ROI is. The ROI, if it's only in dollar signs, I mean, seriously, that's after a certain point has got to be a joke. I understand if you are living in scarcity and true extenuating circumstances, under $100,000 a year for most of the people in the professional realm is a different zone. But for most of the people that I work with and I coach or myself, this is a ridiculous thing to look at in terms of return on investment. And that means that your target has to change. And your target should be more meaning, more love, more connection, more forgiveness, more kindness, more eagerness for the day. And while these seem to be intangible, they are in fact measurable. And in my book, I totally show people not only how, but also what this translates to in academic research. We live longer, we make more money, we stay happier longer. The benefits are infinite.
That makes total sense. I'd like to drill down on something as well, because I know that you serve a lot of clients that are, high achievement individuals. What are some of the maybe common myths that you see around money that you teach people to unlearn?
The first myth is time is money. In other words, the exchange of time dictates how much money you will earn. Now, by that token, then that means that Jeff Bezos is very likely to be 1,000,000,000,000 times harder working than I am. It doesn't make any sense. The time for money exchange is an aggressive problem. And that's one of the things that needs to stop, particularly with founders. Founders are Looney Tunes like me, and we lose our grip because of our controlling tendencies and because of the time exchange. And that dies real hard until you're really on a systematized machine. The second most common myth is I am necessary for the money to flow. I am somehow completely indisposable. This is completely untrue. And it's one of my favorite myths that is debunked in a great, great book that I'm sure you've read, Jeremy, called 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy, which was a pivotal book for my business. I just started to understand 80% of you extending yourself is a complete wasted effort, has absolutely no translation to financial gain. So I could literally just limit myself to a very narrow swath and everything moves very, very differently. In general, people just don't understand abundance because they see abundance, any form of abundance, including money, as finite. So they're playing a finite and very hustle heavy game, when in fact, real money is about a relaxed and allowing game. Again, just like sales.
Yeah, that's so powerful. The words that you spoke there, Keren. So, I want you to get a little bit personal with us, if you don't mind. And I'd love to know more about how did your relationship with money change when you stopped trying to prove your value?
Oh, the best way I can describe it is money is a wonderful servant and a horrifying master. To paraphrase a very common quote, when I was in the service of money, and worried about it all the time, and thinking about it all the time, and obsessed with it all the time, and looking for it in all ways, I compromised my soul in every conceivable way that is not unethical. Social climbing, working super hard, doing things, saying yes to things that were completely against my own values. One great example was when I was offered a job at Vogue, they wanted me to manage the tobacco and fur list. And this is hilarious because I'm anti-smoking and I've been a card-carrying member of PETA all my life pretty much. So the compromise was enormous because of the chase for money. When you start to understand this is a tool that is at your service, it completely changes your disposition, it changes your level of boundaries, and it turns you back into what you really are, which is a compassionate, friendly, generous human being.
Yeah, it makes total sense, Keren. I'd love for you now to speak to many of us who are probably listening to this episode today that maybe they're high achievers, they look successful on the outside, but they feel incredibly empty on the inside.
I want to say something very clearly. If your dreams do not feel good to you, if your results do not please you, and you alone know whether this is true, if you have not attained the success that your efforts have promised, then it's time to wake up and admit it, to do the first thing that is necessary, which is just to admit things are not working my way, and then to go inward to really fix it because you can. Do not run on empty fumes and on insanity, hoping that this will resolve itself or eventually land. It will not. That's my hope for everybody out there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Well, what's next for Keren? As we kind of round out 2025, do you have any specific personal or professional goals that you'd like to check off your bucket list?
Oh yeah, I'd love to tell you that I'm just going to chill out for the rest of the year and have a really good time relaxing with my husband Ryan. Maybe even visit the great state of Minnesota. I've heard the lakes are fabulous. But this is a very busy year. It's an incredible year. The success of GILDED has been absolutely amazing to me, and I'm super happy. And that means that by the end of the year, we're going to start writing the sequel, which is called Gold. I know, no shocker there. And that's about basically integrating all of this work and walking a different path. That's probably my number one focus, other than hanging out with cats and spending as much time as possible chilling out.
Love that. Well, you're welcome to visit Minnesota anytime. I just don't particularly recommend it between Thanksgiving and President's Day.
I will avoid the winter months.
Yeah, exactly. Well, great. This has been a real pleasure, Keren. Coach Keren, what would be maybe one or two different ways that our listening audience can connect with you to learn more about what you're up to?
Thank you, Jeremy. The first thing is KerenEldad.com. I like to say I'm not a Keren, I'm a Keren. That's Keren. That's the best place to subscribe to our newsletter, find out what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. And the other, because I'm a super cool millennial, just kidding, I'm not, I'm Gen X, is to follow us on Instagram at Coach Keren, again, Keren. That's where all of the new things come up, and also where I spend most of my time interacting with the community.
Well, Keren, this has been a wonderful episode. I'm going to listen to this episode a couple of different times after production. Really appreciated you spending time with us on the show today.
It was a huge pleasure. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And listening audience, thank you again for joining another episode of The Freedom Point. We look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.